So if you happen to be a seamstress who does work for military personnel and their uniforms, you might have run into this before, or maybe not yet. I scoured the internet for instructions on how to do this and found nothing. These are the dress trousers for a Marine, and this is the blood red stripe that goes down the side of the trouser. I talked to a tailor on a Marine base, and he told me that the way that this is done is that you turn out the pocket, and this allows you to sew 2 seams down the side of the red stripe, and that makes it work. What I found is that the pocket will not fold all the way out. And so that wasn't giving me a good result. So I played around with it, and I decided that the best way to do this was sort of do a mock sewing machine stitch on this portion of the stripe that has to come over and in front of the pocket. You see that it goes, this is the pocket, and the stripe starts at the waistband up here, and then it comes down in front of the pocket and continues down the pant leg. What I did was, when you get this stripe, it's going to have white stitching that you have to take out. And so you take out the white stitching, and then once that's removed, you have a sort of an imprint of where that was. And so what I did was I put my stripe on my sewing machine and followed those stitch lines to kind of make it look like it's sewn onto the pants, but in fact it was not. So then what I did was I put the stripe very close to the waistband, and I'm just using a fine needle. I like John James needles because they're very fine and they do a good job with this kind of delicate sewing. So I like the John James needles. Any good needle will do this. But then what I did was, once I got this very close up here, I held it in place with a pin, and I'm going down into using red thread, I'm going down into the blue pant and doing a whip stitch right along here to hold it in place. And then I followed down the edge of, there, I think it's close enough that you can see my tiny little whip stitches. And so then I followed down along the side and did that all the way down to past the pocket. And then I did the same on the other side. And if you get very, very close, you can see it, but from a distance, you cannot. And this makes putting this stripe on so much easier. And then once I get down to this portion where it's not attached with a hand sew, then you can actually get the pants on the machine and continue the stitch all the way down. Now, if you look at the military, the Marine manual for uniform regulations and alterations, it's going to tell you that this needs to be sewn, or is supposed to be sewn, with red silk thread. I couldn't find red silk thread, but what I use typically is Gutermann thread, and the color that matches this really well is this CA02776. So even if you need to order this, you can order that color, and it matches pretty perfectly. So you can see my thread against the red stripe, and it's a pretty perfect match. Up here, you can see that I've sewn it with that thread, and it works pretty well. I did lengthen my stitch on my machine to a 3.5. This is on my Husqvarna, the 3.5 stitch rather than the 2 stitch that my machine, typically wants to set on. So I did a woven medium setting, and I did the 3.5 stitch, and that makes the stitch, it doesn't bury down in this stripe too much. It kind of lets it have a neat stitch length down the length of this. So I hope that's helpful, because when I scoured the internet for some instruction on how to do this, when I was struggling with it, I found nothing. So I hope if you find this video, it's helpful to you. I don't think this is the way that the Marines say is the correct way to put this on, but it works. You can't tell that I did it differently, and otherwise I found that you had to take the pocket apart. So I hope that's helpful. This video is coming from So Blessed in Beaver, Pennsylvania, and I hope you found it helpful.